Did you know that there are, in the month of June, here in Anchorage, there are 575 hours, 40 minutes, and 6 seconds of daylight in the month of June?
Feels like it.
Yeah, it does feel like it. That's a lot. That's amazing, right? I know, you all lived here longer than I am. You're used to it. But anyway, it's still pretty amazing. And so I said, well, let's talk about that. The solstice, we're not quite there yet, but it's coming up, and thinking about the light, and it's easy for us to really think about the light, for us especially this time of year, because we really feel that difference in the light and the dark. So when I was down in Kansas City last time, I gave a talk at a church that I used to talk at a lot, and they're out in the middle of nowhere, Missouri, and I was telling them about the spiritual principles that you learn living in Alaska. And one of them is, it's kind of a two-parter, but don't be afraid of the dark, and there's always more light, right? Because, so the always more light part, I'm going to start with that. The always more light part is how they say this is when the sunrise and the sunset is, but we all know that there's like way more light than that on either end of the official sunrise and sunset, both all year long, right? So even though there's so many days of, like, if you were up further north above the Arctic Circle where there's absolute darkness, right? But there's actually more days where there's all light, right? So there's always more light because of that overlap, right? The light wins. One candle takes away absolute darkness. But the other part of that is don't fear the dark. And which is a funny thing to talk about this time of year, right? Because it just doesn't get dark. And it's weird because you can go check the mailbox at 10, 11 o'clock at night. And you can tell if there's going to be a moose running into you. You can see that well. And so it's funny to talk about that, but to not fear the dark, that's one of the things I love about living here, is that in the wintertime, we don't care. We go do stuff, right? I don't know about, we go hike on our trails, we get our little headlamps, and we go for it, right? We go do stuff. We're not afraid of the physical dark. It's just a part of life here. But it's also part of life in the bigger context of things. And I didn't know when I said that my talk today was about being the light that we were going to have 2 celebrity suicides this week. And that's hit a lot of people really hard, that, people that I know, because, people think, wow, these people, they're rich and famous. I mean, these are people actually who are rich and famous, and they seem to have it all, and they travel, and they're, beloved, and blah, 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 and all these things. And it makes people realize, well, maybe there's not. And so it was very interesting for me to learn that after celebrity suicides of the general population go up, which is a very interesting thing. So I think about that, and there's a lot of people, and when the good news is a lot of people are talking about mental health, and that we need to be more connected, and then we need to connect with each other more, and that having a pretty facade doesn't mean that the insides are working out so well. And that's something that's a really great thing for us to talk about, and to remember that we can be more compassionate with ourselves and with each other. As I was digging through stuff this week, I found, I don't even know where, there was a piece of paper that was a note from something. It wasn't a class because it would have been in a notebook, but it must have been some lecture extra thing I went to. So I don't know who I got this from because the other rest of the notes are gone. But I found this note, and it said, we compare our insides, the dark and twisty stuff that we know about, to the outsides of others. So what we see from others, especially the rich and famous people, we see the persona that they want to see. You know, even the people that we know, especially the people we just sort of know, we see the clothes they wear and the way they do their hair and the words they say and things like that, but we don't really know the inner life. Hopefully we have some people that we do know relatively intimately and we know their inner life, but it's hard, right? So that's something to remember, because when we compare our insides to other people's outsides, we're always going to look like we're behind. It's just the way it is, right? So if we can remember that, then maybe it can help us make a connection with somebody who may be struggling. And we may not know they're struggling, but it's like, how do we stand out in the world more authentically so that our outsides don't look so intimidating, I guess. This is what I'm trying, you know. And it's a funny balance. You don't want to be a downer, obviously. It's a bummer to be a downer all the time. But what if we were just a little more authentic? You know, Dorothy asked me, are you looking forward to going to this conference? I'm like, well, there's parts of it I'm looking forward to, but it's 90-something degrees there. I'm not looking forward to that part. I could have pretended, oh, yes, it's going to be wonderful, but it's going to be hot. You know how I feel about that. I've been wearing shorts around here this last week, and it's been 65 degrees, so... And I've been thinking it's great. So, you know, when I was like 10 years ago, you know, I had moved to Kansas City. I was working for Unity. So for many of my friends who I grew up with through Unity, I was living the life, the dream. You know, I had come home to the mothership. And so, in some people's minds, that meant that my life must be great and perfect and wonderful. And so, I had this friend who I had known when we were teenagers. And, you know, how you kind of drift. This was before social media, so and Skype and free long distance. So, it was not as easy to keep track of each other, right? You all know about that. So, we would talk on the phone, and she would be all about all of the stuff that was going on with her and all the drama and all of those things, and that was okay. I'm happy to listen. But it was like there was no space for me to have problems too, because I had come home to the mothership, so I must be fine. Everything must be good. And I would get so frustrated because I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm still living to paycheck, and I still have, you know, relationship snafus, and I still have, you know, the normal things that you're trying to figure out when you're in your late 20s. And, you know, life still had it, and you still wanted that person to talk to, but there was just no room in her world for me to have any problems. Guess what? I haven't talked to that person in a really long time, but not because, you know, but it was just like, it wasn't working for me. And, even though you try to make that connection. And it was like my authenticness wasn't okay. And so I learned to be with people who being authentic is okay. You know, and life is better that way. And that's one of the ways of being a light, I think, because when we let people know that struggle or having a rough day, having a rough week, having a rough month, rough year, whatever it is, it's just a normal cycle of life. Just like the light and the dark that we have outside here is a normal part of the cycle of our lives. And let it be okay. Instead of letting it be the end of the world or the end of everything, because we don't need to compare ourselves to everybody's outsides. So that authenticity piece, that's part of us being the light, right? I'm not saying we need to air all our dirty laundry. That's not what I'm saying. But to think about, you know, what if more people said, there was a long time when people didn't say the cancer word. And so it became a hidden behind your hands, something moral failing that you had. And there was a long time where people didn't talk about postpartum depression. And it's still sort of a taboo thing, but it's coming out of the closet finally. But it's a real thing that happens to a lot of people, and I've been hearing some of my friends talk about their experiences, and why didn't anybody tell me it was going to be this hard? Because being authentic wasn't okay. Talking about our struggles wasn't okay. And gosh, if we just talked about the rough parts as well as the good parts, wouldn't it be easier to connect and reach out and say, I remember you talking about that when you were going through that trouble, and now I'm going through that trouble. Can you help me? And it wouldn't be so scary, Wow, what an amazing way to be a light. And I think that when we try to pretend to be something that we aren't, we're kind of clouding our light too, right? Because we feel we can't be ourselves. And so it's kind of like a combo deal, right? Because when we are being ourselves, then we're not kind of holding it all inside, right? So we get to be a light that way, but we're also sharing our light with the world, but in an authentic way. So it's not like, oh, they're so shiny that I can't approach them. But they show up as brave and strong and powerful and full of faith and wisdom. Those are much more interesting words to be, or attributes to be. So how do we tap into that? We talk about the 12 powers, those are in our inner process, or our inner powers that we're on. It's just an aspect of our Christ consciousness, right? So how do we tap into that inner fire that knows, even when we're in the midst of times that seem really hard? How do we tap into that and know that we're going to be okay? That whatever it is going to be okay. That we're going to breathe through this time of complicated life. Breathe through this time of trials and troubles and all of those things. Well, of course, we have our spiritual practice. And of course, if it's really rough, we have lots of professionals to help with these types of things, right? I am not a mental health professional, but I have some skills, and it's good to share. It's good to share, even when you're sharing with a friend who actually wants to hear and share with you, unlike my friend from teenagerhood who didn't want to hear about, just the rough parts of life. So how do we try? So we tap into that inner fire by taking the time for our faith, even though it seems silly. I don't know if you remember in Miracle on 34th Street, where she's like, I believe, it's silly, but I believe, when she wanted the house. Remember that at the end, and she's like, this is silly. Santa Claus isn't real. And then she's, she sees the house. And sometimes we have to be that way with our faith. We have to be that with the things that we do for our own, physical and mental, spiritual health. Is like, I'm not sure this is doing anything right now, and I'm kind of pissed off at God, because that's the outside God. When things are going well, usually we get mad at the outside God, right? Because we want to be mad at someone, right? And just like, okay, well, I'm going to sit and meditate anyway. Or I'm going to eat the healthy thing that I would rather not, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I know that that's the right thing to do, and it's going to work out better for me. And so we do these things sometimes even when we're kind of in protest. And it matters, right? Because it means we're continuing to move along that step. And so in that process of being and taking that faithful step, that's one more step towards, the figurative light within us, because there's something in us that knows that if I take this step, it's going to be better. Even if there's all those little voices that are saying, no, it's not. This is stomping the feet, the whole little fit. Because it's hard when we get those things. And so, to bring it all together, one more way for us to be that light in the world. I read this story that this journalist wrote, this book about his relationship with Mr. Rogers, with Fred Rogers. And the author talked about how he had not had a very supportive relationship with his father, and how what would really would be really helpful for him would to hear someone he trusted, like Fred Rogers, say, I'm proud of you. And so Mr. Rogers, being the awesome, amazing, wonderful guy that he was, by all accounts, they had these written correspondence would always close with, I'm proud of you. And it made a big difference to this writer, but those words make a difference. And it may seem weird and condescending sometimes in particular relationships, and maybe the best words to say is I believe in you might be the right word in a particular relationship. But what if you said I'm proud of you to someone who was, and see them light up? I've spent all day yesterday at Special Olympics, and I will be heading there very soon. And when you say I'm proud of you, you did a great job. When you add the I'm proud of you, it makes an athlete in Special Olympics light up, because they're proud of them too, and to have someone else be proud of them makes them feel like, yeah, this is a good thing to be. I can be proud of me. So we all know people, we all are people who are trying to do one thing better and do these kind of things. What if we said, I'm proud of you to your spouse or your kid or your whoever, hey, you managed to, do the thing that you were trying to do. Way to go, I'm proud of you. You can say that. Not in the, like I'm judging you way, but like I knew you could do it and I'm so glad that you did kind of way. You can try it on, see what happens. Let me know. Right? Because Unity is supposed to be practical Christianity, right? So, these are the ways that we go out and be the light of the world. These are the ways we go out and help change the world, right? So, this is practical application. So, shine your light. Be authentic. Let yourself be the hand reaching out for connection for all the people in your world. Because I'm proud of you.